So today, we
What are we
got
going on? What are we going on?
a fun one, a very fun one, something that hit home for me this week. So the secret to hitting any goal you can set in your real estate business. It might sound cliche, but it's not just a game changer. This can be a life changer. Like you can literally accomplish just about whatever you want to once you understand this. So,
yeah, it's actually it's a missing component, to almost any sales business, honestly, or any goal that you want to accomplish. But most importantly, in the sales realm, it's easy to get a handle on this for a minute and then forget and just have attrition occur. And it's funny because you chose this topic, and like we've been talking about, I was talking about it with one of our guys here yesterday, and I think without this, Jake. There's a lot of just errors and decisions that happen, and for me, anxiety, because like I'm always super ambitious, but if I don't have clarity on whether or not I got the thing done or did all I could for that time frame, I just walk around feeling unaccomplished, and like I'm always missing an opportunity. I don't know if there's a lot of agents out there that operate like that feel like that, especially until you get to the level that you want. But for me, this was a huge problem. I mean, I couldn't be in the moment, like almost at all anywhere, because I was constantly thinking about, the future, or what balls I dropped or what I missed. And when I talk to older agents who are very successful but have slowed down a bit, they still can't get out of this, feeling like they have to work around the clock, 60, 80 hours a week. Seriously. Like they're like, I just never have any time. I never have any time. And they've just been telling themselves a story because they haven't mastered what we're going to go over today. And nobody's probably ever told them about it. So I'm excited to dig into this, man.
Yes. And something else that just perpetuated this idea that I wanted to talk about it today was yesterday I was scrolling through Facebook in a real estate group, and somebody had posted like, hey, how do people balance this like hectic real estate life with like family life? And I was like, oh, that's such a big part of it too, but it's just getting clear, because it can just feel like a whirlwind and something that's just a trap to constantly find yourself getting into. Because first off, you have to have a goal, right? Like first things, you gotta have a goal.
You gotta start in reverse from the you gotta go backwards, right? You gotta reverse engineer from where you're trying to go. Exactly. And without that, like I'll be in strategy meetings, I'll be talking to people about their life, about what they want to do. I'm like, wait. I cannot help you until I know what the goal is, And honestly, that wasn't some thinking that was natural to me. That was beat into me, probably from Reese. I mean, if I'm memory serving me correct, but I got to deconstruct from the top, and if I don't, it ain't happening. So anyway,
a lot of times talking to him, he would just refuse to even talk to you. I need a problem statement, and what are you trying to accomplish? Then I can help, right? And it's so true. But you have to start with a goal, and if you don't have a goal, like you have to figure out what you're trying. Like take some time on that, because once you're clear on that, the challenge is if it's too far in the future, it can be hard to deconstruct it backwards and not tell yourself a story, because guess what? We are in the business of real estate, and you don't have a manager, right? Unless you're on a team. And even if you're on a team, you don't really have a manager in a lot of cases. You know what I mean? So
I'd say most often, probably if you have somebody that's like monitoring these things for you, you're on a great team,
right?
You should really do well. Yeah. And if you don't, it's not because they're not, a good operator. It's just maybe they're not, dialed in at this level.
And that's not how they were probably brought into it either.
Right. And so that doesn't mean that you need to rely on somebody else to do it. We're going to show you what to do today on, as far as getting to the goal and knowing that you did everything you can to get there. Where do you want to start with this, Jake? Because there's a lot to unpack, and we can really jump into, almost anywhere.
So I think the just jumping into the concept first off of whatever your goal is a lagging indicator, right?
Yes. No, break that down.
Yes. So there's key performance, like we talk about it all the time. If I talk just in acronyms, we talked about this the other day. Like someone came to one of our meetings, they would be like, I'm freaking out, right? Like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
'Cause we're talking,
I was saying we have more acronyms than the government. You know what I mean? Like
yes, we
KPI,
definitely,
GGOP. I mean, like we can keep going. Yeah. And these are all
yes.
things that we use to run business that we've learned from smarter people than us that work really well. So where are you going with that? Leading indicators,
Yes.
lagging indicators.
Yes. So KPIs, key performance indicators,
Mm-hmm.
can be categorized into a couple different categories: lagging indicators and leading indicators.
Yeah.
So the problem is that most everybody focuses on. So if your goal is to sell 48 houses this year, right? That's 4 a month. Okay. If you're only focused on the 48 or the 4 per month, which is even better than the 48 is 4 per month, then it's hard to control that because you're only constantly thinking about what the outcome is versus how you're going to attain the outcome.
Yeah.
Right?
So I want to give an analogy because I want to make this super simple.
Yes.
What I was saying to Ernie here the other day was like, look, if you're going to chop down an oak tree out back, and it's going to take 150 whacks with an axe to chop it down, and your commitment is to do at least 10 of those a day, right? Every day. That's the leading indicator whether or not you've hit that 10 strokes every single day, right? And
Right.
if you were sick or you didn't make it, guess what? You got to double it up next day if you're serious about hitting your goal. And there's a lot of leading indicators in the real estate space, and there's a lot of things to pay attention to. Personally, for me, Jake, because I was not this sophisticated, right? Back in the day, the only leading indicator that I really looked at was the amount of leads that I brought in, right? And then after a while, I started to switch from that. Not even switch. I added on top of that the amount of buyers agencies that we would have every week, and then of course the amount of listings, right? And so like in our Monday morning meeting, I was telling somebody this the other day. We had a big pillow full of cash, right? Because I loved Richie Rich as a kid. And if you had 2 buyers agencies, you could pull out, and they were all denominations. I mean, people would pull out $1, or $100, or $20, whatever. 2 BAs was one pool. One listing was another pool, right? Yeah. And that's how we would do it every Monday morning. I know I don't talk about these things, but that was our Monday morning meeting, right? Like, and everybody would talk about their buyer, what they had, like what they were looking for, and then their listing. Obviously, they would kind of pitch it to the team, like, "Hey, here's what I got. It's going to be hitting the market this day," so we get a jump on it. But the point is, those were leading indicators, and I think that the ones that we're going to dive into right now are much more sophisticated, better, and easier to track, and more accurate, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you log into like our dashboard, right? Mm-hmm. It's pretty clear, right? Of the big numbers, there's how many leads have come in.
Yeah.
Of those leads,
how many leads, right? 30-day time frame.
Right. How many got set as appointments?
Right.
And of those, how many are you now working with?
Yeah. What the idea was, because we're all so busy, was to make it like a dashboard of a car. Like, you glance at the dashboard of your car, like you need to know what speed you're going, how much gas you got, and if there's any red lights, you know what I mean, blinking things, something's messed up, right? But let's talk about why those things are important. Because I think without the lead side, it's impossible to have a good leading indicator in your business, period. I mean, I don't know what else other leading indicator, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. You could be like, oh, well, the amount of contacts, the amount of calls, the amount of doors I knocked, the amount of conversations I had, all that is like, oh man, just so much slower as far as a path to success is just leads. And there's all kinds of places to get leads, right? You should have leads, and they should be a direct response lead, somebody raising their hand to you saying, "Hey, I'm over here. I'm looking to buy a house or sell a house in the next, blank amount of time." But that's the top, in my opinion. Would you agree? Place to start as far as leading indicators are concerned?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
I've never had that.
On and off?
No, that was just randomly. 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Well, let's keep rocking. So we're going to start with leads. How many leads per month, right? It's going to be very important, because you're going to need that watermark to know, right, how many leads you need in order to get to X amount of deals per month. Once you've got that, like, really simple formula, right, now you can crank things up. Obviously, if you continue to do the same activities, theoretically, you should be able to spend twice as much money, get twice as many leads, and have twice as many closings. But there's more to it than that, right?
Yep, and it's a consistent process. I was in when I was doing the door-to-door thing. We had something called ACE, right? So it was like the only way to have like a consistent, predictable result was by having the same attitude every day, being consistent in what your pitch was, right?
Yeah.
And having enough exposure, so enough of a sample size, right? And if you did that every single day, your pitches, you could get down to a science, right? So if you pitched 200 people in a day, you knew you were going to have 20 sales, right?
Well, and there's multiple pitches, right? And this is why it's so hard, because it's like, well, do you track the amount of listing presentations you gave, or do you track the amount of up to bats that you had as far as the phone calls are concerned, or do you track the amount of conversations you had? So I want to make this really simple, because the simpler we make it, the more sophisticated it actually is, according to Da Vinci, right? That was his quote. Yep. And on top of that, I think the hardest thing for me, Jake, like wanting to have a level of success and not getting there. You kind of look like Tom from MySpace turning around like that. My first friend. Anyway, what happens is, at the end of the day, you just don't know whether or not you hit the mark if you don't have good leading indicators to say, yes, I did all I could today, right? Even if your goal was X and you got almost there, it's still okay, right? Like, you measured, you monitored, you tracked, you had a plan, and you went to accomplish that. And I think that the hardest thing for me, like when I first took the personality test, it was an ABA for Keller Williams. They said that I walk around discouraged all the time. And I was like, what? I'm the most positive guy ever. And they're like, well, you never celebrate your wins. That's because I never knew when I had wins, right? Mm-hmm. So I was just always looking at the lagging indicator of the sales. And it was like, yes, yeah, we had a good month, but that month's over. So, time to make the donuts again. Like, right? Like, I don't know. There was never a point to celebrate because I didn't have good leading indicators. And honestly, for my agents, like I would try to inspire as well as kind of like put pressure on, but I never really knew how to do this for them either. And be like, hey, once you've done X, regardless of the outcome for that day, you are accomplished. You've done what you need to do. And if you do that consistently enough, like the example that you gave, it will result in an outcome, and that outcome will give you the watermark to measure, to know. So we're starting with leads. I think the next thing is obviously appointments, right? Yep. How many of those people were you able to connect with, right? Which, if you're making your own calls, which means you're not a market maker, then that would obviously be more conversations, right? Which would be kind of the watermark there. Conversations of people who are interested in making a purchase or listing. So from there, right, the next thing would be obviously face-to-face, which at that point would be, for me, giving a listing presentation or signing them up to buyer's agency, right? The reason why I started to track buyer's agencies was because I had read an NAR stat that said that 80% of buyers who sign a buyer agency bought. But we were so damn good at getting people to sign buyer's agencies. Like, it was not anywhere accurate. Because I'm like, boom, I got the formula. If we just get all these people to sign buyer's agencies, right? Like, if we get 50 of them in a month, we should have 40 deals, because 80% of them are going to buy. Nah, it didn't quite pan out. Granted, I was in a resort.
But the cool thing is, and the cool thing is that you got a average, right? Like, it might not have been 80, it might have been 40.
It was more like 25.
Oh, 20. Well, yeah, resort market too. You got the people in for vacation or whatever.
Well, I mean, we got so good at it, we started, experimenting with charging up front a transaction fee, and we got that easily. We didn't stick with that just because, it's not cool if they don't buy. Like, we don't really want their money. You know what I mean? We want to sell them a house, but anyway, I'm gonna get off the path here. And so
I don't know. Pasha's on, and she might have a question. She said, "I have Q," so I don't know if that was question. That was the personality.
Hit it.
If you want to put that in the chat, Pasha, you definitely can. We enjoy questions, probably
absolutely
more than most. Anyway, So with this, right? I could seriously talk about this for like 4 hours because
it's your life. It's what you do on a regular basis.
Yeah, right? This is just how my brain operates too. So with leads, right? Like every single part is just this is your sales funnel, right? So if you went through and said leads, appointments, face to face, and your closing, right?
Yeah.
Like each one of the spots in between, there's a process to go to take it from this person to this person, right? And
so let's I think you went a little faster. Go again.
yep. So from your process, right?
Yep.
So you're talking about like your listing appointment, your ability to get buyer rep agreements signed was
Yep.
your ability to take appointments or face to faces and turn them into closings, right?
Yes.
The ability for anybody to jump on with a cold lead, right, or a warm lead that has filled something out, right, a lead online, and turn them into an appointment, right? There's a skill set that's there, right? We found out this majorly that there is a major skill set to take a phone appointment, right, and turn it into a face-to-face, right?
Yes.
And it's not even
it
is a skill, but it's really just like asking.
Activity knowledge. It's activity knowledge is what it is. It's just, it's asking them to meet with you. But it's also the dichotomy in the space is agents are used to converting sign calls and people asking about a specific property because there's not real. It's very intuitive, right? You don't have to have like a predetermined kind of a pitch, right? To get them from that to a possible customer. It's just like, hey, would you like to see it? No. If you're like me, you'd be like, well, would you like me to try to find something else for you, right? Like it's a very, very intuitive process. Whereas, getting somebody who is earlier in the process, you have to be able to understand where they're at, understand their customer journey, and talk to them in terms of what they're interested in, because they're certainly not interested in you yet, in order to get them into a face-to-face and then ultimately turn them into a client. And so I like where you're going there. So as far as tracking is concerned, right?
Yeah. If you tracked these numbers in your business and ever sent me an email and just gave me what the numbers were, I could probably give you like your bottleneck and where to focus, right? Because it could be
100%.
it could be perfect math, right? And it could be 100 people coming in here, and of the 100, you set 15 appointments. Of the 15 appointments, you get 5 face-to-face. And of the 5 face-to-face, you get 3 closings.
Right.
Awesome. Great job. Turn this. How many deals do you want to do? So you're doing 3 a month. Do you want to do 30 a month?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, like, sky's the limit at that point. You will run into some constraints of your time.
You don't want to do that all at once, but you just got to have each process be repeatable, right?
Yeah. And really what you're doing is you are vetting out a success system that never fails for yourself. You're mastering that system, and then the next step is obviously delegating it. And the cool thing about delegating it is like you are so convinced in the process because you've experienced it that when you communicate it to another agent, especially an agent that doesn't have a lot of negative habits or preconceptions, they just run. I mean, it's like, a fraction of the time that it took you to get there because you've already done it and now you're helping somebody else do it. And that's really in essence when you go from, like we were talking about last week, serving to more contribution. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
So here's the magic trick, right? Especially when you can just nail it down to 4 numbers, right?
Yes.
4 numbers that drive all your business. The problem is most people focus on this last one, right?
Which is what? Because nobody can see what you're pointing to.
Oh yeah, sorry, closings, right?
Closing. Yeah, most people just focus on the closing, which is the lagging indicator, which is an indication of what you did previously in order to accomplish that. And the problem with that is, by the time it's kind of like, I guess frog in the boiling pot. Like by the time you realize like you didn't do the activities because the lagging indicator of closings isn't there, it's too late, right? And this is where that commission roller coaster comes in. And people have such a tough time, making good decisions in their real estate business because it's hard to invest like in anything, right? Because all marketing is pretty much static. You know what I mean? As far as a fee is concerned, you're going to buy a billboard, they're going to charge you every month for it. Just as an example, similar to a market maker platform, any kind of thing like that, right? It's hard to invest in those things if you don't know when you're going to get the money to be able to pay it next, right? They got a system for billing, you don't got a system for paying the bills. Pasha, obviously, market maker is better. We're biased. We'll have somebody call you though. We'll have somebody call you, walk you through, help you make an informed decision. Obviously we want you to
I haven't heard of
what
that.
you're doing.
I haven't heard of the
Yeah,
one.
I've never heard of them either.
But I mean, they're just they pop up left and right, and I'm sure we felt flattered of the copycat syndrome on some of the stuff that we've been doing.
Yeah, it's been happening the entire time we've been in business, and so
right, part of the game. You have to deal with it, right? It's like having
hey, look, we just run that elevator.
40,000 other real estate agents in your market. That happens in cases there too. So here's the magic trick, right? So instead of focusing on this, right, it's finding the other ones, and that's what you focus on. Because let's say you're, and you made a great point, right? Like if I have done a few things and it didn't immediately get me a closing, but then 6 months from now I have 4 scheduled closings in a month, and I don't even remember where those people came from. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to go back and look and be like, oh, that was working, man. Why did I stop that thing? Right? And then and now you got to wait another however many months where that started working for you.
Well,
you know
and that's a great point, Jake, because what happens is when we're not tracking these things, we just kind of shoot from the hip on everything, right? And so like for most agents, I doubt a lot of them even have a separate bank account for their commissions. To treat it like a business, right? They get their commissions, they throw them in their own bank account. Well, guess what? When that's your money, you're not going to be wanting to go back and throw it in and invest it. I mean, you should have a separate bank account for your real estate business, even if you're on a team, period. And with that, you should be able to know comfortably where to invest, what you need to invest. And the challenge is when you're doing things shooting from the hip, like maybe measuring or monitoring your profit and loss by looking at your bank account, like how much went in and how much went out, right? Like just at the top line, if you even get a statement, like most people don't even get statements because they cost 50 cents or $1 or $2 or whatever. Pat always makes fun of me because I always make him mail me every statement. But if that's how you're running your business, the challenge with that is, right, if you're not watching these leading indicators, you won't know how things are happening where. And that's why it's so easy, like for old guard, agents that are just out there that are got a lot of business because they've been doing it forever, to beat them, because they don't know these things, generally speaking, either. They don't know what's working in their business or why or how they're able. They just know that they have like a consistent level of business every year, and it just kind of comes, and it's the old, yeah. Well, I've been doing it so long that I've been doing it that it just kind of works type of thing. But when you get scientific with it and you start to measure these things, then you can really, really dial stuff in, right? You can dial things in to a point where you can grow so fast, so quickly, and know exactly why you grew that way and how to, again, duplicate it and multiply yourself through others and just scale this puppy as high as you want to go. It's like being Babe Ruth. Like I'm going there. You know what I mean? I'm calling my shot. Yeah.
And when you have the baselines of each conversion percentage, like if anything falls off, then you know where to go look and fix, right? Like
100%.
And it very rarely is the quality of the leads, right? Because if you got 100 leads coming in, you only expect 3 to buy, right? You're expecting 97 not to buy right now, right? Like you would be crazier to think every lead when you're talking to them is going to be a really good one than somebody that's not going to do something for a while or ever, right? So
I think the challenge there, Jake, and I just want to unpack that real quick, is that most of us don't want to look internally for the answer. We always want to look externally, right? So like, oh, well, it's this thing out here that I'm not in control of that is, dictating my outcome and my success. Like if I had a customer that didn't do business with me and went and did business with somebody else that I had been working with, right? What I would tell myself is, oh, they're just a jerk. You know what I mean? Instead of looking internally like, hey, what could I have done differently to provide more value to them, to make sure that they looked at me as really the best choice for them to do business with above going to that other competitor. Once you start thinking like that and taking ownership and responsibility and looking internally for the answer, which is not always going to be right, you're going to be able to get farther faster.
Right. How much did you learn by calling people after you lost the listing, or somebody went with somebody else, and actually hearing from them, like what made them go with a competitor?
Yeah, it's a pride swallowing kind of activity, right? And in sales, because we're in sales, and so we deal with a lot of rejection just naturally, right? Like even sometimes we don't even realize we're dealing with rejection. We just do. I think that we have this internal protection mechanism, like we want to protect ourselves from facing the reality of that. The challenge with that is you're not going to get better. But yeah, you learn a lot. I mean, I'll tell you, a great practice is, if there's an agent in your market that you want to beat, you should be surveying their clients as soon as they close, right? Especially the listings. Like, how'd you choose that agent? What was your experience? And just call them up. Hey, doing a local real estate survey. Saw you just sold your house. Just had a few quick questions, if you wouldn't mind, about the process. How did you go about choosing the agent that you chose, right? Insightful information if you're trying to come after somebody and beat them, So, and especially if you lose a listing, call them back, right? I always knew why. They'd be like, "Well, Mike, you were like really hungover in our meeting." And like, hey, I'm a young guy. I live in Lake of the Ozarks. What do you expect?
Stop being a 26-year-old at the lake. Oh God. But okay,
yeah.
so
note to self: don't set appointments for Saturday morning anymore. Right?
Yeah.
I'm joking. All that's a joke, by the way. kind
of. Partial truth. So with these numbers, like if you can get into a habit of focusing on the front half of this, right? Mm-hmm. And so like I did an exercise with our sales guys, right? Where I had them tell me what their monthly goal was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why that was important. Man, write this down, right? Why?
Is it really your goal, or are you just joking?
Exactly. What happens if you don't hit it, right? Like, you should have some pain if it's a real goal, right? And then, like, what's your bare minimum? Like, what is your actual, like, built-in alarm that if you fall below this, you start freaking out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I had them do that, and then I had them break down and reverse engineer their numbers for both of those scenarios, right? Hit their goal and their bare minimum, right?
Okay.
Had them take an average of so far this year, and where did everybody land up?
No idea.
In between.
Okay.
Right? Which makes so much logic sense, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like not in 911 territory, but I'm looking at things on a monthly basis. So there's a couple days where I can let it slip, right? So if I needed to have 3 conversations, like appointments that day, right? And I had 2, it's only 1, you know what I mean? But the compound effect of that is major, right? So like going back to what you said at the beginning of, if you got 150 whacks to knock down a tree and you commit to doing 10 a day, and there's a day that you're sick, the next day you got to put in 20, right?
Right. If you're serious about the commitment to knock that sucker down in that time frame. If you're not, well, then here's the deal. 2 things, Jake, because you sparked 2 thoughts here. One is the most interesting thing in all my years of being in sales and dealing with salespeople is that most people make exactly what they think they're worth. They have a must number, and they generally don't go above that, no matter what the external circumstances are, right? Like, we could throw more appointments, we could throw more of this, we could throw more of that. Generally speaking, they have a number in their mind, and they're okay with that number, and then they'll make a goal that's like 5 times that, right? Which they know they're not going to hit. And so the hardest thing is to wrap your mind around being worth more. And the ways that I've done that are getting around people who make more. That's the first one, right? So like you elevate your peer group, right? And you're like, damn, like this dude's making this, like that gal's making that. Like, I can surely at least get close to that, right? So that's step 1. Step 2 for me was something I mentioned in several times in the past, but writing down that number and looking at it every night before you go to bed and every morning when you wake up, because your brain will subconsciously pull you towards the activities, the things you need to study, the peer groups, right, in order to get you to elevate to that status. And the third and most important, or equally important anyway, is to make it an attainable goal, right? Don't just be like, oh, I'm going to make $1 million and make that your goal. You're going to be disappointed. When you go, like I was telling her, when you go to the gym, I mean, you're not going to just jump and start bench pressing 200 pounds, right? Like you got to start with the light weights. And number one, you got to show up. Like you got to make a new habit in your life to show up. And I think that's what this boils down to. The leading indicators are about having trackable habits that at the end of the day, whether or not you got to the outcome you wanted, you are accomplished. And for me, Jake, like that is still something that eludes me on a regular basis, and I do still walk around feeling like, I didn't get enough done. I need to do more, but in real estate, I always call it realtor PTSD, right? Like I couldn't be at a function, right? I didn't have a family back then, like my own family, right? I couldn't be at, birthday. I couldn't be on vacation without feeling this guilt, like I'm neglecting something. But having these habits and having these leading indicators that I want to go over again, right? Yep. The exact leading indicators, because I feel like we could do that 2 or 3 times just to drive the point home. At the end of the day, when you're done doing X, Y, and Z, which is now becoming your new habit, your habit of success, right? You know that you did everything you can, and when you're done, you're done. That's it. You get to go home and feel accomplished. I think it's so hard because in real estate, there's so much crap we can do, and there's so much busy work, and there's so much, cleaning the desk and taking floor, picking up time.
It's so delayed. From like when you first meet someone, it's so delayed. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, you just don't know until
delayed.
It's so delayed. And if you don't have these habits in place and you don't know exactly what you need to set out to accomplish on a daily basis and what to track, you're going to be constantly wondering what's happening instead of making things happen. And that's not a good spot to be in. You know what I mean? It just does not feel comfortable, especially if you got financial pressure on top of it. You know what I mean? Especially if you haven't hit the level of success that you think that you should, or think that you could, more importantly, then you're just walking around all the time like, not
commission breath,
and for lack of vision the people perish, right? That's a Bible verse, and I just agree wholeheartedly with that. So you got to have the vision first, and you got to make it something that's attainable, and start with even the littlest personal discipline. They say making your bed, changing that habit every day is a strong one. But as far as real estate, let's go over these one more time. Let's talk about. So number one, the amount of leads that you have. Now this isn't on a daily basis. If you look at it daily, it's not going to be very beneficial. But if you look at it on a 30-day average, it's going to help, right? It's going to help tremendously. Yeah.
Yep. And then, so the leads coming in, the appointments that you set from those leads, right?
Yep.
How many people you get face-to-face with, and then how many closings you have, right? And if you don't
there
know,
could be an in-between on the face-to. Go ahead. I was going to push back. There could be a fifth one. There could be an in-between on the face-to-face, right? Because face-to-face doesn't mean they're your client yet, right? And so you could go from face-to-face to client, which I would strongly recommend. You know what I mean? Especially if it's on the sales side or on the listing side, right? How many face-to-face appointments, how many listing presentations did you give? And of those, what's your conversion rate to get somebody to list with you? Now, I always thought my conversion rate was much higher than it was. And I started to track the number of listing appointments I would send out to my agents, right? And then their conversion rate. And I know I told this story. I'll tell it again. I was talking to a buddy, Matt Shreves, way back in the day. And I was like, man, they're only converting at like 60-something percent, 62%. When I go, I get them all the time. He's like, well, what's your conversion rate? And I was like, well, it's, really good. And he was like, well, have you ever tracked it? And I was like, yeah, no. He's like, you should probably track it before you pass judgment. And I was like, oh, that's actually a smart idea. So I started tracking it, and mine was like 65 or 67%. It was marginally better, you know what I mean? And so I found that very interesting because then that gives you the reality, right? Like we all have this revisionist history, especially if you're like me, you know what I mean? Like an eternal optimist, like, oh yeah, I do everything really well. Not so much, right? There's always room for improvement. And so then you can go back and you can be like, hey, I'm just really curious. Congratulations for listening to your home. Just for my own information and understanding, because I do this for a living every day. I'd like to know what prompted you to choose that other agent, and what I could do better in the future with other customers. Maybe to increase my chances of being able to do business with them. can you share with me kind of your thought process? And listen, you can't hurt my feelings. I just want you to be brutally honest,
Right.
Yeah. That most people really respect that, and they're going to tell you the truth. Your breath stunk, Mike. You had horrible breath. We didn't think we could deal with that for 6 months. I'm joking. I never got that one. Huh? That would be hilarious.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
I got
okay.
things like, well, the other agent, had more experience than you, was older, had been doing this longer. You know what I mean? Because I looked like, 12. So I got a lot of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, nothing I could do there. Just more up to bats. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But there was something I could do. And that was to over-educate myself to compensate so I could be more of an expert. And that's generally what I did. Like when I got in there, like I would knock their socks off with irrefutable, logical information of how I was going to do a better job and what the reality of the market was as it pertained to them in their home. And that's on the list side. On the buy side, it was, I don't remember what the specific conversion rate was, but it was very high. You know what I mean? From people to come in to sign up to a buyer's agency, which again, didn't always translate. And I wouldn't even recommend that necessarily these days. With the type of appointments that we generate, it's not necessary. If it's something you want to do, I would baby step them into it. You know what I mean? Like lead with more value rather than extracting, which is what I did.
Yep.
I extracted first, but back then things were different. I mean, it wasn't as ubiquitous, Rets feeds. I mean, even Zillow wasn't even around back then, so like we had more, to hold closer to the chest. You know what I mean? The listings and things of that nature. So, yeah. These days, I would explain to them, the benefits of having somebody in your corner and what the different types of agency are, which you're supposed to do in the state of Missouri anyway, and you're supposed to give them a disclosure. I would just briefly explain that and say, look, if you want me to operate in this manner, I'd love to. It requires a formal agreement, which is on a state form. If you'd like, I could show it to you. If not, whenever you're ready, just make it super chill.
Relax. No big deal. No big deal. No pressure here.
MBD. I had several of them where I'd be like, hey, I'm going to fill it. Oh, you want to sign it right now? All right, just keep it with you. Whenever you feel like I've earned your business, go ahead and sign it and give it back to me. Usually by the end of the first day show, and they'd be like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even have to bring it up,
That's awesome.
So,
That
yeah.
is awesome. All right, Pastor, we will give you a call too, and reach out and kind of walk through everything of what we got going on. Because if it was in Portland, it was probably a while back a little bit. So things are changing all the time around these parts.
Indeed.
Dialing it in. So as I'm not even going to get into that yet. First thing, as a reminder, before you get into yours,
I'm ready.
Nail the point home one more time, right? Do not, whatever your goal is, right? Like you should start with a monetary goal because every time I ask it, it's got to do with time too, right? So I always ask people whenever we're getting people's goals, it's like, okay, what's your goal for the next 12 months? Sometimes they have the next 3 years, right? So I want to make $1 million. If you're doing 50 grand right now, not a good 12-month goal, but maybe a good 5-year goal, right? 3-year goal even could be attainable.
Well, and here's the thing. There's going to be a lot more that you have to invest in yourself to learn to be able to become the person that's going to be able to accomplish that. I mean, if you're going to multiply yourself through others and grow a team, now you've got to get some skills in management, right? Like there's a lot of management skills that you don't possess, that you don't know that you don't possess, that you're going to have to start to, research and sharpen and study. And, when you deal with humans, like you got to be able to talk to them properly, motivate them properly. I mean, you got to be diplomatic. And most importantly, you got to give them a plan for success that can actually work, right? Because you don't want to waste somebody's time or livelihood, And so anyway, yeah. I mean, we can break it down real quick. Let's say, because we were just doing this, we were going to do a calendar. If somebody wanted or a calculator, if somebody wanted to make another 100 grand this year, right? In addition to what they were making, and they wanted to do it from online lead generation, average commission was like 7,000 something, right? On 246,000 average sales price nationally times 3%, it was like $7,500. So what is that, Jake? What's 7,000? Let's just go 7,000. Let's be conservative. 7,000 divided by 100 grand is what? 14. That's 14.33 or 14 point something transactions, right? Which is just a little more than one a month. If you had 100 leads a month and you had a 1% conversion ratio, right? You would get 12 transactions, which would get you darn close, right? You'd probably need about 120 leads, and I'm shooting from the hip, right? At a 1% conversion rate in order to achieve that, right? So of that 1% conversion rate, now, because there's 120 leads coming every month, you need to be able to sift those suckers to get to just the people who are worth talking to right now, which would be the appointments. Of those appointments, you need to sift and sort those people of the people who will actually meet with you face to face. And you got to have some skills and some benefits for them to meet with you face to face, right? Because they're not just going to get in their car and drive over because, you know, you said so, right? You got to give them some benefits. You know what I mean? I mean, there might be
although that does work some of the time.
It does work. It probably works. It works better than not asking. I'll tell you that. But of those people, right, that you meet with, okay, then X amount of those people are going to become clients, and that's going to turn into that 1%, and off to the races you go. And so it's not rocket science. Like I could have drew it up on the board, but my penmanship is so horrible that you probably wouldn't have been able to track any better anyway. We're going to put a calculator up though that'll help because I think that's really good with clarity.
We'll put that. We'll put that in the group.
Yeah, we'll put it in the group. Maybe we'll fire an email off with it too. So let's get out of here, Jake. We're over. Take us out, brother.
All right. Yeah. So as we always say at Market Maker, you are always one pre-position appointment away.
Every day. And listen, if you'd like some help with these things, that's what we do here. We'd love to help you. We want you to go to marketmakercall.com, watch a short video on how this works, how we generate these leads for you, nurture these leads in a way that elevates your status of authority, and then ultimately drops them onto your calendar as an appointment so that you can track these things that Jake is talking about on a regular basis, have a goal and have a plan to hit that goal with leading and lagging indicators. If you want some help with these things, go to marketmakercall.com. Again, it's marketmakercall.com. Thanks so much, everybody.
Hey, then you only have to focus on 3 of them instead of 5 of them.
The other 2, you got to focus yourself. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it depends on your business methodology, but this is the one for, like, yeah, if I was schooling my brother, this is what I would tell him. It'd be those 5 things.
Yep.
So there you go. Yeah.
All right, go get it.
Rock and roll.
Later.